lot of producers think their drums need better sounds, but sometimes your drums just need better decisions. Stacking, velocity, panning, timing, and feel can change completely how your beat hits without adding 20 plugins and downloading a new drum kit. So in this video, I'm gonna give you the 5 things that I wish I knew about drums in FL Studio or any other DAW for that matter that I wish I knew in the very beginning. Make sure you stay tuned to the very end of this video because I'm gonna teach you how to make your beats less stiff, less basic, and way more alive. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, and the first thing that I wish I knew about drums in the very beginning is that velocity can give your drums a totally different bounce. So what do I mean by that? So as of right now, I have some hi-hats going on. These are just standard trap hi-hats. And as you can see here, I have pretty dynamic velocity going on. So let's go ahead and play the hi-hats. All right, so now you can definitely hear a difference when I A and B the two. So starting out, just having all the sounds and that one velocity level, once again, it could work, but I like it much better with the looser velocity where I have it going up and down, giving it a little bit more bounce, giving it a little bit more groove. The hi-hat rolls are kind of teasing the ear a bit more as opposed to being very loud. And it's really going to depend on the context of the actual beat that you make itself. Do you need more of those percussive elements and the hi-hats really hitting the listener's ear? Or do you want the hi-hats to kind of live in the background a little bit? You want them to be a little bit more tucked away where they act a little bit more of a background percussion sound, background percussion feel. So not every beat needs to have those hi-hats just jamming, hitting the ear. Sometimes it just needs to be eased back a little bit. That can give you a little bit more looseness, a little bit more bounce, a little bit more groove. So that's the thing that I definitely wish I knew in the beginning. I would listen to professional producers' beats and just wonder why mine tended to miss something. This is one of the things that I learned and I wish I knew in the very beginning. Now you have this gem and you can use it on your next beat. All right, and the second thing that I wish I knew about drums in the very beginning is that stacking your drums can have crazy results. So what do I mean by that? So a lot of the times I see producers just reaching for the volume knob to make their drums louder. Or if you use FL Studio, I see producers just going straight here, pre-computed effects, using the boost knob, just making things louder. And there's a distinction that I want you guys to walk away with. There's a difference between things being louder for the sake of being loud. There's another distinction of things being harder, being fuller, being more powerful. So we have loudness and then we have more power. And whenever you're just going straight for the volume knob, a lot of times you're going for more loudness. Sometimes that can work, but then in other instances, you actually want to drive more power into the actual sound. So let me actually show you what I mean by that. So I have this beat going on here and I have a kick. I like the kick. The kick has a lot of snap, a lot of punch. It's just hitting really good, but it's missing a little bit of low end. It's missing a little bit of those lower frequencies. So I'm going to go ahead and play this beat as of now, and we're just going to listen to the kick as is. So let's take a listen. All right, that kick has a lot of good punch to it, like I said in the very beginning, but I want to have more body to it. So let's go ahead and play this secondary kick that I added to it, and let me show you what I mean. So I'm gonna play it as is, then I'm gonna introduce the new kick, and you're gonna instantly tell whenever I unmute it. So let's go ahead and listen. All right, so you notice how when I added that complementary kick, we just got more power. That second kick really just hit the low end and supported the rest of the snap of that main kick. So as producers, once again, I know a lot of you guys like to go straight for the volume knob, but before you go for the volume knob, go through your sounds and see if you can find another kick to support your main kick. So I like to say there's a kick that has a lot of character that's really matching the tone and the texture of the rest of the beat. Then we have a supporting sound, a secondary sound that's adding to that main kick. So your kick might have a little bit of a stomp on it or might have a little bit of crunch to it, and that's the main kick that you like. But you can always go through in your different sounds in your folders to see if there's another one that can support it. And I know a lot of you guys sometimes just want to keep going and get through the rest of the beat, but this is a tip that's really going to take you guys far. So please don't forget it. Please use it, and please always remember you can add more power to your drums by stacking them with complementary drums. This is one tip that I wish I knew in the very beginning. Now you have this tip and you can use it on your next beat. All right, and the third thing that I wish I knew about drums in the very beginning is that every sound does not have to be centered. Guys, I'm almost embarrassed to admit this, but we're family now. I've been creating content for a little bit now. I feel like I could share this. So, guys, I used to think that all drums needed to be perfectly centered with no panning. And I think the reason that I thought this way is because when I was using Reason at a period of time when I was first kind of finding myself, I think it started just automatically panning some of my drums in Reason. And I thought, oh, that's a mistake. Everything is supposed to be right in the middle. You know, Reason is messing up my drums. So I used to just make sure that there was no panning to my drums and everything was perfectly in the middle. Guys, that is not, that you do not have to do that. It's almost embarrassing, but you know, I wanted to share that with you. And for example, I'm just going to play this little part here of this drum pattern that I have. Instead of having this sound panned, I would have just pushed it back in the center. So I'm just going to show you really quickly. Okay, so you guys hear how that one tom sound is panned? Back in the day, I would have panned it straight in the middle and be like, oh, that was a mistake. So yeah, you know, go ahead and roast me in the comments. That's one of the weird things that I used to think in the beginning. And I'm sure that maybe some of you guys have some crazy myths going on in your head. You know, panning can be a great way to create excitement. As you could tell, having that one sound just pop out of nowhere can really play a trick on the ears. Also, you can have certain sounds like, let's just say conga or bongo sounds. You can have a couple going here, 1, 2, then another one going here, 1, 2, and it creates this nice little wall of sound, especially for percussive elements. So guys, please don't do that. Please don't feel like everything needs to be in the middle. There's one thing that I wish I knew in the beginning. Now you know. You probably already knew that, but walk away with that gem and don't tell anybody I told you. All right, and the fourth thing that I wish I knew about drums in the very beginning is that moving your sounds slightly off grid creates different bounces or different feels. So here in this beat, I have a hi-hat loop going, and I also have this rim shot going. So with this rim shot, what I did was I actually used this feature here in FL Studio called Shift. And shifting is playing with the placement of the rim shot, so it's not perfectly on the grid. It just automatically does it here in FL Studio. Maybe in your DAW, if you're not using FL Studio, it has it as well. But in FL Studio, we have this shift option. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to play the beat as is, and then I'm going to play with the shift button just so you can see how different feels happen. So let's go ahead and play this beat, and I'm going to do it live. So let's take a listen. That's perfectly on grid. I'm going to shift it a little bit. All right, so for that rim shot, you can see I went to some extremes. I pushed it all the way off the grid with this shift knob and it sounded off. Then I put it back normal. I put the shift back normal and it felt okay, but it did feel a little bit didn't have quite that swing. You know, a real drummer hitting the drums, a lot of times they're not going to hit everything perfectly on time, and that's a part of the feel, that's a part of the soul. So whenever I got it right, it was like kind of right here, right in this area here, this shift area. That's where I really like where the rim shot was hitting. And of course you can use the shift option, or you could just come straight here into the piano roll, especially if you guys are using a different DAW, and then you could just, you know, play with, just zoom in and then play with the placement of your sounds, whether it's the hi-hats, whether it's the rim shot, usually kind of a somewhat of a background percussive element I tend to see really good results in. And I used to not really know how to do that, especially in the DAW world. When I was back in the MPC days, you know, we had the MPC swing, so that was pretty cool to use. But whenever I got here in the DAW world, I did want to, you know, get that soul, get that balance, and not have everything perfectly on the grid. So this is a way that you can do this. I wish I knew it in the very beginning, because I kind of thought that it might not be possible. You know, back in the days, people used to be like, you know, you have to use hardware or you can only use software or whatever. There used to really be that battle. These days, it's much more even. And part of the reason is like this type of realistic swing and groove that you can get, but you can achieve it here in FL Studio or any type of DAW. You just have to play around with things just to get that nice kind of swing that you're looking for. So this is something that I wish I knew in the very beginning. You know it now, and you can use it on your next beat. All right, and the fifth thing that I wish I knew about drums in the very beginning was to produce for recording artists as opposed to producing for other producers. And what do I mean by that? So sometimes as producers, we can get really caught up in the hardest 808s or the hardest snare, the newest gross beat style plugin, that we can forget who we're actually producing for. This is for the drums and overall beat making as well. So, you know, as you're in there, as you're cooking up your beats, as you're adding your drums and playing with the swing and the sound selection, always put your mind back on who we're doing this for. That's why a lot of the times in my Heat Check live beat review show, that you can of course check out in the description, submit, I'll be glad to give you my feedback, that always say, you know, rap out loud, sing out loud, so you can make sure you have a nice clear path for the recording artist. And sometimes as producers, we're doing a lot of this stuff on our own, or maybe with one or two production partners. We can forget that we need to remember that the artist is going to be the final instrument. So if you have the craziest hi-hat pattern, you have the craziest new loop, it's all for nothing if the recording artist isn't feeling it. So try not to get too ultra methodical and ultra narrow when it comes to producing and beat making. Sometimes you need to take a step back, take off that beat maker hat, put on that producer, executive producer hat, and then just start to envision a song. Okay, overall, I like the feel of it. I like how those drums feel. I like the pitch of the drums. I like how everything feels all together as one big picture. So guys, that's one thing that I've definitely fallen in the habit of wanting to go crazy and compete with other producers. But man, I wish I could turn back the hands of time and tell myself that, look at things from the perspective as a producer producing for artists, so that way I don't get too lost in the sauce. You can keep that in mind the next time you cook up a beat. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit like and subscribe. My name is Desmond A, and I'll be back with more great videos. Peace. Wait, before you go, make sure you go to DesmondASounds.com, where you can get free FL Studio patcher plugins, free loops, free guides, everything you need to level up your music production. Once again, go to DesmondASounds.com or click the link in the description. Go there now and totally transform your music production.